Good evening, Brendan Corrigan, as I live and breathe.
Oliver, how's it going? How are you?
It's fine. It's pretty good. Yeah, I would say
Okay.
we are in positive times. How about you?
Well, hopefully. You might hear a bit of background noise tonight as well, because right behind this window there's a bit of a workshop going on with some music. But, might add a bit of flavour to things. And I'm still actually, Ollie, in some shock, which kind of ties in to what we're going to be talking about later tonight in terms of financial institutions and where best to put your money. Because, Ollie, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, sorry. I can't. We can't hear anything in the background.
Oh, okay. Sorry. This is a problem here between the things. Okay. No, but I was going to say I went into my secondary office today, and my pan chicharrona that normally costs 500 pesos, had shot up to 700 pesos. Now, I know people are going to go, Brendan, that's only 200 pesos. It's a 40% increase. If my bank or anything would give me a 40% increase on things or an interest rate on savings account, that would be fantastic. But anyway, there we go.
40% extra on interest rates would be what, from 1% to 1.4%? But yeah, we'll talk about
something.
We'll talk about those robber barons later.
Yeah, we will, and that is the theme of our show. And while bankers, Ollie, tend to get bad press all over the world, there appear to be more reasons to dislike them in Colombia compared to many other countries. So on tonight's Bogotá Nights, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, we're doing a run over on the banks here and their, at times, questionable practices. The fact that many banks charge a monthly fee for simply having an account with them is unfathomable for some. Then there are charges for using another institution's ATM or making more than a certain number of cash machine withdrawals per month. That's just a sample, but all things considered, do you find banking here reasonable or reasonable? Is Colombia a financial haven or simply a banker's paradise? Send us your thoughts right now by using the live message facility, and your messages will appear here on the screen. Or if you're watching this recorded, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet, the handle being @BogotAPost with the hashtag Bogotá Nights. This show is all about viewer interaction after all. That's to come in the second half, but first, tomorrow will mark day 24 of the national strike, or Paro Nacional, and while one can debate just how representative those continuing to take to the streets on a regular basis are of the Colombian public at large, what is clear is that there is a hardcore of protesters who show no sign of quietly retreating. Ollie, new normal has become a buzz phrase for our post-pandemic life. It seems fair to say that in Colombia right now, for some at least, any new normal must include significant changes on how the country has been doing business in practically all walks of life. Are there any signs of consensus between protesters and government over 3 weeks into this as we are now?
Depends what you mean by consensus, Brendan. If you mean something that's actually going to happen to go forwards, no, absolutely not. They are in agreement on one thing, which is that they hate each other.
Well, that's good to know. That's one starting point anyway, I guess. We get to that.
I mean,
they have... Go on, yeah.
It's been comical so far. I mean, I don't think anybody comes out of this looking good. The Comité del Paro is asking for some quite ridiculous things. Sorry, I've got a dog here. And the government just is offering some compromises, but very limited. And they're just doing stupid moves. I mean, it's not helping anybody, is it? When you start your negotiation days and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to send the army to get rid of all your blockades." In what? Who on earth thinks that's a good negotiation strategy on day one?
Well, I'm guessing there'll be some people by now that might say protests are one thing, big gatherings at landmarks in cities and things like that, and even maybe a gentle blocking of traffic. But when you're stopping food supplies, as I mentioned in the intro, it would be interesting to know how many people now are kind of going, how long more are they going to go on with this now?
Yeah, that does seem to be the way that public opinion is going, Brendan, that, I talk to a lot of people, and, this is borne out in polling. The last poll I saw from Datexco, put sort of strong support for the basic ideas of the Paro, which is to say nobody's happy with corruption. That goes without saying. Everybody thinks that senators and politicians in general are paid far too much. Everybody thinks that, frankly, the rich don't pay their contribution. There's no surprises there. However, there's also a majority of people now saying, yeah, we do agree with your aims, we agree with your general ideas, but also I would like things to be available in my supermarket at a reasonable price. So, yeah, I think we're getting close to the point, Brendan, where public sympathy for the protests is becoming very, very stretched.
In fairness, though, you had to go at the government and kind of harebrained decisions or whatever, and we've had plenty of them from Dookie over these last 3 weeks. But the focus would seem to be somewhat correct if we're going by measures that have been announced, and there's still debate if they're going to be introduced because there's still talks going on between those behind the protest, the heads of it, and the government. But like this idea that was proposed, at least, we're not sure if it's still on the table or not, about having what I guess I'll translate into an affordable house scheme for those aged 18 to 28, that they'd be guaranteed by the state in terms of getting a mortgage and things like that. And then another scheme for young adults to get employment, and how the government would guarantee, again, like a minimum wage or pay a certain amount of that minimum wage. I think that's how it would work for the companies they'd be working for. So that would seem to be, because when you look at the protests, the majority are under 30, and those people who maybe are still studying and are thinking, well, what prospects are there for me going work in a call centre if I can get my English up to speed, or nothing else, or leave the country perhaps. So the focus is on the youth,
those are good proposals, absolutely. And let's not forget, those were in the actual Reforma Tributaria as originally proposed. There's no doubt about that. There's nobody's saying these aren't good proposals. I think what's kind of insane is to say we're going to put forward these proposals, and obviously that did come a bit later. That was Tuesday and Wednesday. But then also to say, we're sending the military to attack your guys who are striking on the roads. That it's a mixed message, isn't it?
No, for sure, exactly. And obviously we've talked over the last now 3 episodes in terms of the heavy-handedness, and more than just heavy-handedness, of course, of the state authorities in this. But we've both witnessed events. Because, again, yesterday, if people aren't in the know, yesterday was another big protest day. And then you kind of have smaller protests scattered out throughout the week. And there's another 2 big protests planned for next Wednesday, the 26th, and next Friday, the 28th. But yeah. So Wednesday, yesterday, was another big day. You were in Eroes at a low estimate. You're saying about 6,000 people, perhaps 6,000 people were there.
I'd probably go somewhere. I mean, it's very hard to estimate. It's such a vast area, there's people spread over. But yeah, a few thousand. What I would say is, though, that there were a few people down at Americas, passionate, noisy, dedicated and firm, but small in number from what I can see. All of the other central points, apart from Eroes, were all very quiet yesterday evening. Nobody in the Parque Nacional, nobody at Parque Hippies, nobody at Campín. Everybody concentrated in Eroes and around the Portales. And again, at the Portales, not big numbers. And is this fading away? I think it is.
Yeah, well, to mention at Porta Norte, because that was my point. I was just going to say how, like, the police to some degree. And we know other parts of the country, there's other things going on, and we've had some terrible cases of alleged sexual abuse in Popayán, continuing chaos, I guess is the right word to say, in Cali as well. Here in Bogotá, it's been played to a different beat and kind of has been throughout. But in Puerto del Norte, it looked like things might get a little bit heated. You had ordinary police with their riot shields because the protesters had taken over an additional lane. They had been letting 3 lanes of traffic go heading south on the Autopista Norte, but then on the southbound lane, then they took over 1 extra lane. The police didn't like that. Some of the police were talking to those orange-jacketed officials saying, hey, can you talk to the protesters, tell them to move back? Those guys went in, but then, of course, they started shouting resistencia and all this kind of stuff that didn't want it to happen. The police were going, it was obviously maybe they had this agreement before, and they wanted to maintain this. So the police went in, the normal police with their riot gear things, their riot shields, tried to push them back. It was kind of didn't look like it was going to happen or not, but initially did. But then the ESMAD did come over, but they were just standing there, and that obviously got the shoulder up on the guys, the protesters, and they kind of reacted in a very negative way. But the ESMAD didn't get involved, and eventually it all just kind of, through dialogue, it seemed, people going back and forth, that the protesters went back to their original position, and then the police, the normal police with their riot shields, went back to their position, and everybody lived happily ever after last night, so it seemed anyway. So it does seem that the police here...
Let's be very clear, though. I mean, it's worth saying this thing. It was, passionate and noisy. I wouldn't say it was quiet at Héroes, but it was non-violent. Non-violent at Puerto del Norte. Puerto del Americas definitely had, tear gas and, baton charges. So, let's kind of remember that other parts of the city haven't been necessarily quite so lucky.
No, and there would appear to be some people who are only looking for an excuse to kind of get involved in anything that might go a little bit untoward. We did have reports of petrol bombs and things like that being fired at police down in Ciudad Bolivar and other spots. But Ollie, you talked about like people, the people who aren't involved in the protest might support them, but they'll start kind of wondering if there are food shortages and prices go up in the city. But there's been kind of 2 almost contradictory economic financial news for Colombia. Number one, but this had been flagged apparently from a long way out, and all the blame can't really go on the protests, the credit rating being downgraded by Standard & Poor's, I believe. But then on the other hand, something that seems to have gone under the radar, Colombia's economy has performed well in the first quarter of this month. This year, I should say.
That hasn't been reported at all. It's a growth of 1.1% on GDP. The prediction was that it would continue to fall, that it would still be going down another 0.4%. That's because of the lockdowns at the start of the year, obviously post-Christmas. They appear to have had a smaller effect than expected. So, of course, we're going to see some pretty spectacular numbers coming up economically in the next few years, because, of course, year-on-year growth will be really dramatic if it continues growing. If it continues growing as it has done in the next quarter, then it's going to look really dramatic against last year, where obviously there was a big drop.
Yeah, so that's going to be good, because the other side of these protests too, or the international element to it, is that people watching in, and we do get people, okay, they have links to Colombia already, but watching in from all over the world, with people from Australia and the United States, we usually get comments from there. But it won't be good for your average Joe, perhaps, who hasn't visited the country, thinking, I wanted to visit Colombia, but all this news of protests, and obviously the US, whoever's in charge, what's the body in charge of international travel, they're advising their citizens, were saying, not to travel to Colombia. I mean, that regularly happens, I think. It's not a massive announcement. But internationally, if this is going on and on and on, it means, tourism numbers are going to be hit in a year when they've been badly hit already.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, but yeah, good news. And look, the downgrading is again not ideal, but it was something at least that was known about for quite a long time. It is going to be super problematic because Fitch ratings now, who everybody thought would be the first to pull the trigger, they definitely will downgrade Colombia as well in the next couple of weeks. When that happens, a lot of people will be forced to sell off Colombia's now junk bonds. They won't be able to keep them in, sort of hedge funds, especially people managing things like pensions. They can't take risks. So that's going to be interesting, and we'll see how that plays out. In a way, the market had sort of adjusted to that already. As you say, it wasn't an unexpected outcome. And of course, the minute the Reforma Tributaria fell, it was basically guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned the government. There's a couple of other news stories we want to get to, but just quickly, because this time last week we had just received the news that Claudia Bloom had stepped aside, basically resigned as Cancilleria, as Minister for Foreign Affairs, as Minister for Foreign Affairs, as other people might call it. And her replacement was announced yesterday, and it's none other than the Vice President, Marta Lucia Ramirez. So she's taking on two tasks, I take it now, or whatever that exactly means. It's not unprecedented, I believe. It did happen before, from seeing a couple of the headlines. But an optimistic way to look at this is that she's obviously decided she's not going to run for president next year in the election. But somebody said, well, she's it's a show of support for President Duque in these very tumultuous times. The other thing is, Ollie, as you suggested earlier, she really had no other option, and Duque had no other option. No one wants the job.
Yeah. I mean, put simply, no one wants to be associated with Ivan Duque right now, and rightly so. Now, I sympathise slightly for Marta Lucia. Her position now is she's far too connected to Duque to be anything other than political poison at the next election. So, the Centro Democratico are already making steps to distance themselves from Ivan Duque. There's lots of briefing is coming out, sort of saying, well, we don't agree with this and we don't agree with him on that. So he's becoming isolated. And I suspect in, 9 months or so, a lot of the Centro Democratico stuff is going to say, hey, vote for us this time and we'll put a proper one in, not like this last one. So, yeah, I mean, she didn't have much choice. And I can't see anybody wanting, it's not really an attractive option, is it? Do you want to take over as Ministry of Foreign Affairs with all this pandemic confusion, and you're only going to be representing a lame duck government for the next year, and then everybody's going to hate you? Why would you take that role on?
Yeah, I mean, we've had already a bit of musical chairs there with the former commerce minister taking over at the finance ministerio, the Hacienda as well. So there's been a lot of moving around, but as you say, moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. But we only have one more year to suffer, but a lot can happen. A lot can happen in a week, as they say in politics. So what will we be talking about next week in terms of politics? By the way, guys, future episodes we will be talking about that presidential election, and my headphones just fallen out, and who we're going to be. Who may be the likely candidates and things like that. Also, in half an hour, we're going to be talking about banking here in Colombia. Get your thoughts into us. What do you find absolutely ridiculous with the banking system here? Or do you think it's actually fine compared to your home countries? Because obviously both Ollie and I were from, Ollie's from the UK, I'm from the Republic of Ireland. Similar banking systems. We're perhaps used to more lighter regulation, let's put it that way, in recent years. Anyway, it might be changing, but do let us know. We'll take your comments right now on all of that, guys. But before that, Ollie, big news, but because there's so much news going on here, maybe hasn't featured as much as you might think, but Jesus Santrich this big man in the Farc, and he didn't join the peace movement. He was a rogue element as well. He's been killed. But number one, who was he, and what do we know?
Well, he rejected the peace movement, let's say. He was part of it. Then he got accused of potentially helping to move drugs around, and went on the lam with a couple of his old mates from the Farc. There's lots of allegedlys floating around here. The US wanted him extradited. He didn't want to be extradited, so he went off to the jungle, taking up arms again, etc. It doesn't generally help your case, I have to say, proving your innocence by running away to the jungle and doing an A-team. Anyway, out he was in the jungle of Venezuela, and depending on who you believe and what's going on, he was attacked by criminal bands. There was a shootout between various bands, Colombian commandos, Venezuelan military. Everyone's got their own opinion on this. What does seem correct is that everybody does seem to agree that he's dead.
Yeah, no one seems to be disputing that, because there's probably a few people, cynics out there, and you couldn't blame them either. We've in this country, we talk about it on a weekly basis, that you can't always believe everything that you hear. Now, of course, there are other people who are saying the man was dead 30 years ago. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But it certainly seems that he has been killed. But also, has there been? I haven't heard much. This might be just me, from the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. I mean, if this was Colombian troops moving on Venezuelan territory, he kind of doesn't seem to be too bothered about it. You would have thought this.
Yeah, at least he's not giving sort of big speeches about it. There was a couple of Venezuelan opposition senators kind of said, it's not on having Colombian troop movements within our territory, yada, yada, yada. But it's all very confusing, and I'm sure we'll find out the truth later. Diego Molano, the defense minister, again, a new defense minister, a relatively new defense minister, he said that he was waiting for confirmation. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, but of course, also the Farc themselves have come out with a statement. It would seem. But anyway, probably seems like I'm kind of jumping the running order here a little bit. Guys, you wouldn't believe it, but we do have a running order. But because we're talking about Venezuela and border incursions and things like that,
yes.
The borders have opened, but not in Venezuela. That's to come, apparently, on the 1st of June. But for those who wanted to go by land into Brazil or Peru, and best to look to you if you wanted to do it via Panama. But the land borders are opened, and into Ecuador, though Ecuador is a bit of a special situation because the Ecuadorians haven't actually opened their side of it. So we'll have to wait how that plays out in the next few days. The Colombian government are apparently in talks. But a sign, I guess, of moving to use that horrible phrase again, our new normal, that the land borders are opening after them being shut since March last year.
Yeah, it's been 14 months, something like that. Look, it's a good stage, and actually, there's a few more things in there. Travel from Colombia to the United Kingdom has been normalized, so that's fine. Not fine to go the other way, but it is fine to go now from Britain to Colombia. So that's a nice step up.
Okay. Any plans for you to go back to the UK, by the way, in the coming months? No?
Not any plans, no.
Okay.
I mean, if you've got any contacts with Boris, because I really don't want to have to pay a couple of grand to sit in a hotel for 10 days and not see anybody I know.
Are you asking me because you think I may have links to the Conservative Party or something? Thanks, Ollie.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Anyway, from borders and when we talked about this earlier today, we were saying, I'd written down Copa America, play or stay away. But the decision's been made for us, and Colombia kind of brought it upon themselves in many ways. They had this rather ridiculous proposal to postpone it, which was all just released this afternoon, by the way, guys, until the end of the year.
This evening.
Yeah, in an already jammed football calendar. I mean, a lot of people are putting that down to the standard of football in the Premier League. There's been a lot of like drab 0-0 draws, 1-1 draws and things. Just the players are exhausted. European players have to go into a European Euro Cup as well, those whose nations have qualified. But anyway, so you can imagine Everton, the likes of Everton, allowing Jerry Mina and James out, other clubs, for an end-of-year tournament. Anyway, of course, Conmebol rejected that, and they said, thanks, Colombia, for offering to host. You've been ever so good, but we're going to go ahead with the Copa America 2021 in Argentina, and perhaps, we don't know yet, maybe a helping country. How do you feel about all of that?
I will quote to you, Brendan, from a friend of the newspaper, and I think you know him as well, Carl Warswick.
Yes.
And Juarez has said, Colombia told to do one by Conmebol over their last-minute request to postpone the Copa America. Humiliating for the Colombian government, who fought tooth and nail against all common sense to co-host the tournament. And that really sums it up. They there was no planet, there was no way on this earth that you could possibly have thought this was a good idea. To what they were thinking, it's just out of it. And the way in which they announced it, to the end, again, it's the same sort of bungling ineptness that we see week in, week out from this administration. Exactly the same thing. They say, instead of taking the decision themselves, they go, oh, well, no, we'd like you to put it back to November, please. Just so that Conmebol has to make the decision, not them. So they're not saying, oh, it's not us. Oh, we just want the fans to see it. It's not because of these strikes. It's nothing to do with that. We just want fans to be able to enjoy watching it in the stadium. And Conmebol, quite rightly, cooled their bluff and said, all right, fine, we're taking it off you.
Yeah, a face-saving exercise, I guess, by the Colombian government. They've got their excuse now, and Colombian Government Football Association. And all that.
No, they haven't. I mean, nobody looks at this and says, "Oh yeah, Colombia's been done over by Conmebol." That was their transparent effort to do that. But I don't think anybody is buying it. I can't see anybody in Colombia buying it. Social media already is absolutely full of people saying, this is a victory for the protesters, and rightly so, it appears to be.
Yeah, I actually saw a friend of mine tweeting that. He high up at Banco Casa Social or on Facebook saying that. He said they call these protesters just vandals, and we've already got rid of the tax reform. What was the second thing? I forget what the second thing was. And number 3, the Copa America now has been ditched. But we did say, okay, it's gone now. But there is the argument that, if it had gone ahead and Brazil were due to play a few games here, that, you might have got, I don't know, are we really kind of being overly optimistic here, thinking that up to 10,000 maybe over the course of the tournament of additional supporters or visitors from Brazil would come in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's absolutely possible. I think, it's not going to be as big a crowd as you would have expected, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago, with the benefit of hindsight. But look, just imagine the scenes, Brendan. Imagine, I don't know, the Argentinian and the Paraguayan teams coming on their team bus through a storm of missiles, petrol bombs going around left, right and centre. Or, the other way around, armed riot police, driving their little tanks around and water cannoning protesters. It would have been absolute chaos. Yeah, indeed. Of course, now, that's to say that the protests are going to keep up in intensity, but at the moment that looks like if the world's cameras were there, absolutely there would be more protests. And by the way, I was saying earlier, these protests are quietening down. They're looking like they'll fizzle out. What I don't mean is that they're going away. What I mean is protesters will be simmering down for a little while. And absolutely, it's going to flare up. I would not be surprised to see protests coming out again later in the year, not by any means. Don't forget, this is a continuation of what started in 2019. There were flare-ups in 2020. There will be flare-ups again in 2021. Of that, you can bet your bottom dollar.
Oh, for sure. I guess the one difference is that we've got a presidential election coming up next year. So, there will be that outlet for people to make an actual real change to the country and vote for a candidate if they feel there is an appropriate candidate going forward that will represent what they want. But yeah, we'll certainly watch this space. By the way, Angela, thanks. It's always nice to know that people are there. We do like your comments. So, yes, we should say I was missing number 2. But yeah, health reform and, of course, the couple of ministers who went by the wayside as well in terms of what the protesters have thus far achieved. You could say maybe they're achieving one thing a week. So what will come next week? Maybe maybe Duque will resign. Quick word on the Giro d'Italia, Ollie. It's going well for Egan Bernal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, after being very worried about a severe back injury sustained last year, he's really bounced back. And, talking to some friends on WhatsApp earlier this week, somebody did posit that actually, having that back injury and being forced into what would be potentially quite a trying time mentally and physically, it could be quite good for Duque. It could be quite good for Egan to have to stop him getting a little bit too arrogant, to stop him getting a little bit too carried away, to stop anything going to his head. For a man who, when he's on form, it looks effortless. And earlier this week, his accelerations on the final stage in Italy were extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. When he's on that form, nobody can live with him.
Well, Ollie, thanks for that. Now you put an image of Duque cycling a bike around Italy in my head. Maybe they should do a role reversal and let Egan Bernal run the country and send Duque off to Europe cycling around. We'll see how we get on. Anyway,
well, Guy. I know who would be better at their respective job swap.
Okay. Anyway, guys, we are moving on to banking, and Harold Rodriguez has been in with a quick comment. We'll get to that in a second, but banking in Colombia, those of you watching live, do let us know, what is your favorite bank in Colombia? Or also, I'd like to know, did you have a choice in it? Because I know a lot of times you start working with a company and the company tells you, you must bank with this bank, which I've been subsequently told is actually illegal, that they can't force you to go with whichever bank, but they make you do it.
There's lots of those things in Colombia, aren't there, when they say, oh yeah, but that's illegal. Yeah, all right, you go and tell the company that.
Well,
that would be enforced.
I know. Well, I will say, in fairness, I've mostly been a freelancer here, which brings its own problems when you're trying to open a bank account. Or it certainly did back in the day, back in 2012, 2013, when I was trying to do it. But when I did get my first full-time job with DDB Worldwide Colombia, and they said, BBVA, the Spanish bank, is one of our clients. They do the marketing for them. And I said, well, that's wonderful, but I'm with Banco Caja Social. And they didn't push the point. They said, no, that's fine. That's okay. And there were no additional charges, because that's another thing. Sometimes the whole point is, but we'll have to pay extra to send the money to another bank, which I just think that's one of the other points we're going to be talking about. Do you want to read out Harold's comment just to get the ball rolling, and then we'll get into kind of.
I'd like to know when Harold was in Canada. So he says here, he says banking in Canada seems to have clearer rules. I have no idea about Canadian banks, but I can't believe that's not true. That must be true, just because it couldn't possibly be any more labyrinthine than in Colombia. More widespread. Now, that's a really interesting point Harold makes, because there's some young people in that workshop. it's an amazing thing. How few Colombians are in the banking system. I think this is one of the things it's really easy to forget, I think, as a foreigner at times. But actually, a really surprisingly high number of Colombians are not at all in the banking system. And it's very, very high. I think last time I saw only something like 60% of Colombians were what they call bancarizado, that had bank accounts. So it's a really, really low number compared to, say, Canada. So that's a really interesting point that I think a lot of foreigners, wouldn't necessarily understand always. He does say some fees he thinks are better here. That's interesting. I mean, I hear that. And checks. I'm really astonished. I mean, surely, Harold, let me know if I'm wrong, but surely Canadians are not using checks in 2021. Surely.
By the way, Harold, do the Canadians, sorry, this is a silly point, but do the Canadians use the British conventions when it comes to spelling and the correct spelling of check, as we would say, rather than the US spelling?
Well, he's certainly spelt it correctly here, so yeah, you'd have to think so.
Yeah, for our British English conventions. Yeah, interesting one. I certainly agree in terms of the Colombians and bank accounts. Like as regular watchers, viewers will know, I'm in a strato dos barrio now, and I would safely say the guys I hang around with here at the weekend, I don't think any of them have a bank account. Well, I know the ones I know well, they don't have a bank account. Yeah, and so many. It's all just cash in hand. And of course, a lot of the time it is just basically they're living week to week. They don't need massive savings. Now, having said that, and I don't like to kind of promote one bank, and especially this one, Davivienda, because I don't like them. But they have Davi Plata, and that seems to be kind of like a way to have a bank account, but not have a bank account. Like I know all those ingresos solidarios were all used via Davi Plata and things like that. So it's kind of like a middle ground that Davivienda.
Neki as well.
Oh, that's I see signs like that. I keep on thinking of Nuki in Choco when I see that. I don't know what it's about. But in terms of just like opening up a bank account, I checked with my man in Banco Caja Social. You still need a cédula or a contraseña, is that what it's called? Like you can't open it up with a passport. You can't arrive here with maybe, look, I've got $10,000. I'd like to open up a bank account, but I only have my passport. It seems they wouldn't open. Now, would they for that amount of money is another question.
We had a similar thing when I lived in Japan. You turn up and go, where shall I put all this money? Like, no, computer says no, you need to go and get a little name stamp. I can't sign my name. No, you need a name stamp. That sort of thing. Look, it is kind of ridiculous. A lot of foreigners do report, Brendan, having got a route and a NEET from the DIAN, the tax agents, the tax office, and then being able to open one with a passport. It doesn't sound easy, and I'm not entirely sure how you would go about getting a route and a NEET without previously having had a bank account, but I guess that's for another day. I had a very similar experience to you. The reason I originally banked with Banco Caja Social was simply because my employer banked with them.
Oh, okay.
And then I got a Davivienda account because my next employer was with Davivienda. And I said, can't you pay into the Caja Social? And went, you're not that important to them. Yeah. They would rather not hire you than you not open that account. Fine.
Well, one thing I will say, Davivienda, I started with them for the simple fact that at the time in 2012, 2013, and it took until 2013 until I actually had a physical cédula to open the bank account, I was teaching some of their high-up managers, in their headquarters out in Avenida 26, El Dorado. But I banked with them for a while, but I wasn't happy with all these monthly charges. So Harold's been on about like some of the charges here or whatever are better. I mean, but a monthly charge just to have a bank account, I mean, I found that absurd, and I still found it absurd. So then when I got so annoyed and I tried to kind of lure Davivienda into trying to get rid of it on the advice of somebody kind of, telling them a few falsehoods that I'd all this money that I wanted to invest, but I wasn't happy with these charges, blah, 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 blah. Of course, I got nowhere with them. So then I did an investigative journalism little piece and went around to a number of banks. And Banca Social was basically the best because they didn't have, technically they had what they call a bolsillo. They put minimum 5,000 pesos a month away, but you can access that money at any time you want and withdraw it from the ATM or directly from the bank. But I guess they factored in that most people probably won't, or those who are on a steady wage won't go near that bolsillo. So it's almost like a monthly fee. But yeah, there was the normal restrictions of you can only have 4 withdrawals a month and then you'll be charged over that. I can only take out money at Banca Social ATMs. If I go to others, I will be charged. So you had all that stuff. But compared to all of them, Banco Popular, some of the banks didn't give me the information. They just wouldn't give it to me when I walked in. They were like, oh no, you'll have to be. I was like, what? But Banco Popular had 2 separate monthly charges for an independent person. I'm talking about an independent guy. So I didn't have like a proof of income or anything like that, just irregular flows of cash going in. 18,000 pesos a month. This was back in 2014. Like madness. Yeah. So those fees I just don't understand. As you said before, Ali, it's like, they're investing your money. Now, I'm not saying I've got millions or whatever, millions of dollars that they can be investing. But at the same time, it's in there, it's sitting there, whatever. They're investing it to give out loans to other people, and then they're charging you for that privilege. Now, bizarre. Yeah, I will say I do understand a little bit better the Colombian culture. Is that they told me this in Davivienda and some students as well, other students not working in banks, that it's the idea that it's security in a country where there are a lot of maybe security risks, that you actually pay for that security to know that your money is safe and sound in that banking institution. I don't know. And
coming back to what we were saying before, if a lot of people aren't using banks, then of course, they are, in a dangerous position. They've got money under the bed or whatever. And I think, of course, there is a lot of protection here to do with money laundering and things like that. So it's not entirely crazy, all of these rules.
No, they're not. Are the fees, I guess. But I guess, you see, this is the other thing that always bugs me. It's the poorer, in inverted commas, are those, just kind of making enough to get by, making ends meet, that are going to suffer. Because I imagine if, Santos, the Santos family, or what's the other big family behind El Tiempo, I always forget their name. But anyway, what Colombia's richest went in and kind of go, I'm not happy with this banking charge. If you don't remove it, I'm going to take my money and move elsewhere. They kind of go, okay, we'll get rid of that charge, sir, because you've got millions and millions banking with us. But it's the more insignificant people that they have to shoulder these kind of costs, and it hits them more, obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it seems unfair and it seems unreasonable, and that's the way life goes. We do have an update from Harold on checks, which makes a lot of sense. So he's saying here that people get paid in checks rather than payroll deposit. That makes sense to me, actually. I have to say, I used to get paid in checks when I was a bicycle messenger. That was up until 2006. So yeah, that's not too crazy. I certainly wasn't using them to pay. That's what I would say. Angela says same experience for her. She's got payroll accounts. So accounts just to receive money in BBVA, Bank Colombia, Davivienda.
Well, okay, that's interesting, because then it brings back, and when we posted the preview of the show on the various expat foreign group pages on Facebook, one of the common comments was about the 4 por mil charge. And it seems some people were unaware that your first bank account, and I only have one bank account, you can have that legally, you're allowed to have that exempt from 4 por mil. Now, somebody did comment and saying that if you have transactions of over 12 million a month, I'm not doing that at this moment in time, running through your bank account, you will be charged on the on anything that goes over that. And one little note of warning for people, because this happened to me with Davivienda when I was happy and I kind of left in fury from them. I went in to close my account, but of course I told them this before I'd taken out any money, and they closed the account, then gave me the money and charged me 4 per mil on the money they gave me. So what you should do if you're going to close your only bank account that's exempt from 4 per mil is just dry the funds out of it first, and then go in and close it, I guess. I'm guessing that's how you could work your way around that one.
4 per mil is just, and let's not forget, Brendan, this is a temporary measure that's been in place now for what, 12 years, something like that, more now. Somebody will be able to tell me, I'm sure. Look, absolutely comical. I mean, the thing about 4 per mil, though, again, I do get where the Colombian government is coming from. It's something. It's very similar to their obsession with VAT, IVA, which is basically they can force people to pay it. And, you've got to remember in a country where so much is done off the books, where so much is done off the records, where the tax evasion is so normalized, the government will always look for a way that they can go, well, this we can definitely see, and this we can definitely get the money from. So there is a kind of thing there.
Can I use the terrible term? It's a tax they can bank on, Ollie, getting into their coffers.
Very clever.
Now, speaking of charges, though...
So can we just put a little... Yeah. I'd love to get this from the audience. So anybody listening, what's the fee or the idiosyncrasy of Colombian banking that you think is the most annoying, irritating, or ridiculous? There's 4 per mil, certainly a contender. I can think of a lot more in my head. But what winds you up?
Yeah, by the way, just speaking of charges then as well, this might be another one and it seemed to rouse the interest of a few people too. International charges. Now, I'm not doing any international transactions, so I don't know. It's not something that concerns me. But I've heard people being charged like 10% on money that they send internationally. Like, is that normal or whatever? But according to this person who's a business woman, she said like it was daylight robbery as far as she was concerned, and it's why Colombia doesn't kind of get the foreign investment in terms of, I'm guessing, maybe small and medium enterprises like it maybe should compared to other countries. But I don't know how it compares to other countries.
It's out of I've only ever really been paid by Colombians in Colombia. It is a bit of a pain. I would say, though, moving money internationally wasn't any more of a pain. I think I did it once, and I don't recall it being any more difficult in Colombia than it was in England. You have to get one of them IBAN numbers. That was about it, really.
Yeah. And like, as far as I know, in other jurisdictions, it's pretty expensive to move money internationally. It'd be the same in Ireland and the same in the UK. The banks take a substantial cut, which of course doesn't make any sense because they're only typing numbers into a page.
No, none of it ever makes any sense, does it? Yeah. My favourite in England, I know we're talking about Colombia, but my favourite in England was when you went overdrawn. The first thing the bank would do would be to send you a letter to say you were overdrawn. And of course, said letter costs another 25 quid. You're like, okay, number one, how does a computer-generated letter cost 25 quid? Number two, I'm already losing money. Well, what's the need for kicking me when I'm down?
Oh, they like to do that, Keep a man down. But in terms of like silliness too, last year I discovered, now this is a good thing, a CDT. I'd never heard of it before, but basically like a notice deposit account is what we call it in English. So I was able to lock in a bit of money, and now the interest rate last June was over 4%. It was rather high. Now I know people say, "But inflation, blah blah blah." I understand that, but just in a direct comparison to the likes of the Eurozone and the UK, that interest rate was quite generous. Anyway, I tied in that money, and then when it matured at the beginning of this year, I went into the bank and I was going to withdraw some of it and continue on with other. Now, in the meantime, the interest rate had more than halved in value. I guess that's to do with the pandemic. But anyway, that aside, so I went in to get it, and I forgot to bring like the receipt that they gave me at the time. But they were able to show me it's there. But they go, and have you got the actual like receipt? You give your cedula, you give all the information, the money's there, it's my name on it. So, oh no, we can't do anything until you come in with that actual little receipt thing. It's like, God, come on. I mean, maybe that would happen in other places, but this tendency here to really every tiny little piece of paper is required, and they're very pernickety about it all.
It's not like banks in any country to be pernickety, is it?
Well,
but yeah. I would say those things. I mean, look, one of my weirdest experiences in a bank in Colombia was going in to withdraw 60 million pesos, which, there I was, and I said, I would like to withdraw 60 million pesos, and the woman looked at me and she said, have I heard you right? And I was like, 60 million? And she said, right. And then so bizarre. So she takes out a pair of little computer speakers, the kind of computers you have for gaming or something like that. She puts them on the top of the counter and starts playing just some random music through them. And I'm thinking, the bloody hell is she doing now? Are we kicking off a fiesta or something? But she's doing that to so that people can't listen to what we're saying. And I'm thinking, God, Colombians are so paranoid. Anyway, so she goes, right, we have to do this. We have to go and get these bricks, because obviously they don't have it in their little till. So she comes back and she gives me all this money. It was quite exciting. You get these big bricks of cash and they're all bundled up with the 10 million written on the side of them and stuff. You can't open them. Puts them in the bag. She says, oh, do you want the police escort? And I said, that sounds great. So yeah, of course I'll have a police escort. Great. So I walk out of the bank, policeman's there on his motorbike, and I'm thinking, okay, hop on the back, let's go. This is pretty rock and roll. No. He walks across the plaza with me. He's got his motorbike. He just rolls his motorbike along the plaza with me. Everybody's looking at us. I'm dressed, even by my standards, quite flamboyantly in a big hat and a flowing coat. And I'm suddenly extremely aware of how much money I've got. We're in the center of Bogotá. We're in the Parque Santander. So we walk across, he flags down a taxi for me. He says, right, we're going to this notaria, take him there, blah, blah. And he follows us along. The taxi driver refused to make any conversation with me. We got off at the end. I said, thank you very much. And that was that. And then when I came to give the money over to the person I was buying, this was for a house purchase. When I gave the money over, and I'm like, and I've been touching this money every 5 seconds because I just so paranoid. Anyway, I take it out and I kind of go, oh, here's the bricks. And this old woman, she was 70 something. She just goes, yeah, just takes it off me like it's nothing, puts it under the seats. Yeah, fine. No problem.
Money. Okay.
And I'm like, all right. I mean, this is probably the most exciting sort of financial day of my life, but yeah, for you, it's just normal, regular, whatever.
Couldn't care. Obviously, you were dealing with a wealthy enough Colombiana, so if that was her reaction to it, I know plenty others who would be running away from you at top speed. I just see Angela's been in touch about an incident where she was once robbed of a large amount of money. Well, to her that is, but I'm sure it is to me as well these days. Anyway, but once by Diane, just because somebody mistakenly issued a resolution saying I owe Diane money. It took 7 months to prove and get the money back. Wow. Now I do have not at all a similar incident in terms of the amount, and I'll say the amount because it's not that much, 40,000 pesos. But it was with Banco Santander. So I think it was before I had my own bank account. And I used to withdraw, whenever I was withdrawing money from my account in the UK or in the Republic of Ireland, I'd use Banco Santander for the simple fact, I think this was a case of ignorance being bliss. It used to tell me that there was a zero cost on the transaction. I don't actually think that was the case, but I used to go there anyway. So I took out, of course, Banco Santander is not here anymore, took out whatever amount of money, and there were 2 fake notes in it, I subsequently discovered. So it was on a Sunday, I think I took out the money, and I went back in on the Monday. This is obviously the gringo card working for me. And I told them, look, I got all these 20,000 notes. And you can surely check back on the camera. Now, of course, anyone could have changed the notes during that time. But amazingly, they believed my story. I had to, the clerk went through it with me and said, well, you have to write this letter, do this, blah, blah. And 2 weeks later, I got my refund of 40,000 pesos, would you believe? I guess it was because it was such a small sum. They'd probably go, well, what idiot would really go and fight the case for 40,000 pesos? Well, they didn't know who they were dealing with, so I did. It was a matter of principle. And I got my 40,000 back in about 2 weeks.
Well, still 2 weeks is not too fast, is it? But Angela does make a good point, though. I mean, I often sort of think about having 3 Colombian bank accounts. I've got my Davivienda account, I've got my Falabella account, and I've also got my Dian account. Because, they invariably mess up my taxes, which means I end up paying more in tax, through the year on pay-as-you-go taxing. And I'm inevitably then owed some money at the end of the year by Dian. And, all my Colombian friends just say, look, don't bother trying to claim it back. If you try to claim it back, they're going to really look at your finances. It's not worth it. Just leave it there. And this is the amazing thing, Brendan. They pay me interest on the money that Dian owes to me.
Wow.
It really is like a bank account.
But it's a Dian account, or they bank with a particular?
No. It's just my ledger with Dian. So,
okay.
Basically my employer pays money to Dian for me every year, or Dian takes it as I'm paid. But they don't always take it out correctly. So when we do the taxes in September, October, usually it's about $1 million and a half that I've been incorrectly paying tax.
Okay, nice to know. A nice little gift at the end of the tax year. Well, Angela was just saying that she had to go into Dian once a month for 7 months. I'm sure that was fun, because one thing we didn't really go into in detail here as well is actually physically going into the banks. A lot of the time you might be competing with plenty of queues. And I know in the pandemic, there's been queues for pretty much everything. But Banco Caja Social are kind of famously known as being number 1, the poor man's bank, or the poor person's bank, and number 2, maybe still in the 20th century in terms of technology and what they do, which in some regards isn't too bad. You can say they're uberly cautious, which I'm not.
Talking of behind the scenes, sorry, I just want to rush this one out. The reason I've got an account with Falabella, by the way, is purely because they will give me a debit MasterCard. I mean, in 2021, and I was talking to Davivienda today, and they said, we've got lots of clients all trying to do the same thing, so you'll just have to wait your turn. 2021, and they're giving me a MasterCard Maestro in 2021. That's the type of thing you give to a 13-year-old child in England.
Maybe they just don't trust you, Ollie. They're doing it for your own good.
It's infantilizing. It's ridiculous. It's the most absurd thing in the world.
I hear you. Yeah, there are. I mean, I have something similar as well with Banco Caja Social, but these days I'm not making too many transactions. But well, hopefully that changes in the next year. But we really only scratched the surface, Ollie, on this. There's so many other areas that we want to get into. Yeah, especially in terms of mortgages and things like that, and you've got plenty of experience on that. But guys, that is our lot for this episode of Bogotá Nights. We will be back with you, all going well, hoy en ocho, this day next week, probably talking about protests, but hopefully maybe something more, well, I'm going to say more exciting, but something else as well. But guys, until next week, ciao, ciao.
Bye.